Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here on our AmpliFund training overview today. My name is Bonnie Yoshizaki, and I work for Idaho DEQ. I'm the non-point source coordinator. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I just wanted to note before we get started that we have grant recipients in this training from several different DEQ programs, the Federal 319 Non-Point Source Grant Program, the State Agricultural Best Management Practices Grant, and Governor Little's Leading Idaho Initiative. This training will be 1 hour long and will cover an overview of AmpliFund, how to set up your account, and what your next steps should be once you are active in the system. Next Tuesday, August 8th, at 8 a.m. Mountain Time and 7 a.m. Pacific Time, we will be having our second training, which will be going over an in-depth process of how to submit a payment or reimbursement request. And both today's training and next week's training will be recorded. So we will be sending out that recorded link to watch at your convenience if you're not able to join us live. Also, I just wanted to note that you won't be able to enter invoices and request reimbursement until you have a signed contract in place. We have our AmpliFund contractor, Jennifer, with us today, and Jennifer and Andrew will be leading the training. We will be on the training to answer questions specific to the grant program, so we will be here throughout as well.
Thank you, Bonnie. So as Bonnie said, today we are going to learn how to navigate through AmpliFund, which is DEQ's new grant management system. One of the outcomes from this training is that you should be able to access and edit your account in AmpliFund, edit a grant, and run reports. So we have quite a few things that we're going to cover today. And the ultimate goal is to allow you to manage your awards with DEQ, including submitting funding, doing performance reporting, and understanding where you are in terms of the life of your grant. What may already have happened is that when you get a new award from IDDEQ, they're going to send you an email notification inviting you into AmpliFund. It's likely that a lot of you received these emails over the last few weeks. So this is your first step in accessing the system. And I forgot to mention at the beginning, but I will pause throughout the training for questions. So at that time, feel free to unmute and ask your question. The rest of the time, I'll ask that you stay muted. You can also use the Q&A for questions, and I will answer it at that time when I pause as well. So this activation email has a couple of pieces of information on it. You're going to see the name of the account owner, and this is a contact that DEQ set up. You should also see that the email specifies that it's from the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality. It's going to give you the award amount. And then there's going to be two links. Most everyone on this call should be new to AmpliFund, so we're going to use the second link to register an account. And I am going to switch my screen here to show you what those emails look like in system. Okay, so I've received this email and I have two links. The first says log in to see the details of your award. This is what I will use after I've registered my account for the first time. Since we're all new users, we're going to come to this last sentence here and click on the green words that say this link. That's going to take you to a page to register your account. So it will take you to a screen that looks like this, where you see your email address. Again, this is going to be a user that was specified by DEQ, and it's going to prompt you to create a password and then confirm that password and submit. From this point forward, anytime you log into AmpliFund, you will need this email address and your password. Another thing to note is this email comes from no-reply@gotomygrants.com. This email is going to be in the slides that are provided after the training. It's possible that this email goes into your junk email, so I would check that if you haven't received it. A best practice is to add this email as a contact in your list so that it goes into your regular inbox. Are there any questions about the activation email or registering an account? Okay. Once you've registered an account, after that point, you can go to this URL, gotomygrants.com, to log into AmpliFund. So again, you're going to log in with that email and that password that you created. You'll click login. That will take you into the system. A couple of other things to note: you can choose the options to remember your email, so you don't have to type that in every time. You also have a forgot your password option. This will let you reset your password in case you ever forget it. And again, that password reset email is going to come from no-reply@gotomygrants.com. So every email that you get from the system is going to come from that address. So that's also why we advise adding it as a safe sender. Okay, once we've logged in for the first time, this is the home page of AmpliFund. It will look like a calendar. And the reason for that is that IDDEQ can assign you tasks. And if you have any tasks, they'll show up in this calendar. You have this toggle of My Events and Tasks. If you turn that off, you can see tasks for your entire organization. You can also choose to sync this calendar to your native calendar by clicking the subscribe button. So for example, if you use Outlook, you can sync AmpliFund to your Outlook calendar, so these tasks populate in your Outlook calendar as well. Inside of AmpliFund, there's several different navigation options. In the upper right-hand corner, you're always going to see a series of icons. These will change as you move through the system, but there's always going to be some icons here. For example, there's almost always going to be a print option and an I for help and support. We will cover help and support a little later on in the training. The other main navigation that you will see is this left menu. Notice that on this left menu, I have a gray arrow. I can expand the menu so I can see the full names. If I want to collapse it to save screen space, I just see the icons. The menu has several different areas. Anytime you click on one of these icons, you're going to see a drop-down menu. Within this drop-down menu, sometimes you'll see arrows. These arrows can be expanded to show additional choices. The activity part of the menu is going to show you kind of current items that are going on with your grants. So if you're assigned any tasks by DEQ, they'll show up here. Any achievements that you need to log, expenses. So this is kind of a shortcut to different parts of the system. Contacts is going to be associated, mostly, you won't use this too much, but you will see DEQ in here as a funder organization. You'll also see a list of your staff as you continue to build that out over time. Grant management is where you're going to spend the majority of your time. This is where all of your grant records from DEQ will live. You'll also have access to reporting through AmpliFund associated with your grants. And then each grant can store documents. There's a link to those documents here. And then the Knowledge Center has some different tools that you can use. And finally, administration is going to be where we update our accounts, add new users, do some general kind of maintenance of the system. So kind of our options that we've reviewed so far, icons in the upper right, menu on the left. Finally, I also want to point out this icon down here at the bottom is the AmpliFund Resource Center. We'll cover this a little as part of our support, but what this Resource Center is onboarding guides and walkthroughs to take you through the system. So if we expand this recipient onboarding guides, for instance, I have several options. If I click the recipient navigation overview, it's going to walk me through different parts of the system. So it's showing me that if I click on my name, I can change my password. If I click next, it's going to take me through different pieces. So I can subscribe to the calendar and I can keep toggling through this guide. If I'm done for the time being, I can close it out, but I can always access it again in the Resource Center. Notice that I've now completed steps 3 of 6. So these first guides of recipient onboarding are going to be a lot of what we'll cover together today. But this is also a great resource for you to come back and refresh your memory with. Okay, any questions so far? So one of the first things you'll want to do when you get logged into AmpliFund is update your account. There's 2 places to do this. The first was pointed out to us by the guide. Your name should be in the upper right-hand corner. If you click on that, you can see your account information, you can change your password, and you can log out. Again, you also have access to the help and support, which we will cover a little later on in the training. But for everyone that received the activation email, we want you to come into AmpliFund and update certain pieces of information about your organization. To do that, you're going to come to administration and then license information. In general, as I move through AmpliFund, my preference is to right-click and open a link in a new tab. That allows me to switch back and forth between screens as I move through the system. You don't have to do that. You can just click on this tab. So that's a personal preference. So if I click on this license information, open it in a new tab, I come to a screen that looks like this. We're obviously looking at some fake data here. So my organization name, I work for IDDEQ test recipient. You can see that DEQ set up some basic information for me. They've put in an address, they've put in an email, and they've put in a unique entity identifier. That information may be missing for your account. So if that's not there, what you need to do is click the edit pencil in the upper right-hand corner, and then come in, check that your name is correct, add your address. So these are just text boxes that you can type into. This email address will be for the account owner. If this is not the correct email, make sure you update it. You can also specify who the account owner is. This will be a drop down of all your users. In a second, we'll look at adding new users. And then the other piece of information that you need to enter if you are a federal grant recipient is your unique entity identifier number. Once you have all of that completed, you're going to click Update. And if you've missed any fields, you'll get that warning that just popped up. that there's a problem with your submission, please review the form and correct any errors. The other required field that you have to complete is the EIN, or your federal tax ID, which is typically a 9-digit number. So I'm going to click update again in the bottom right corner. So just a quick refresher, we got to that by clicking the edit icon, which always looks like a pencil. And it's one of those icons that lives in the upper right. Are there any questions about editing your account information by coming to administration, license information, and edit? I see we have one question in the chat. Can an entity with multiple grants from different designated grant managers have a single account to manage all of their grants with the same login? Yes, we will look at that in a second, Andrew. If your organization has multiple grants from DEQ, they will all be present in one AmpliFund account. Your grant managers need to be added as users to a single AmpliFund account for your organization. So that's a really important clarification. Your AmpliFund account is at your organizational level. Each staff person at your organization does not have their own account. They're users in your organization's account, which we will cover users in just a moment. But that's a great question. Any other questions or points of clarification at this time?
Jennifer, this is Bonnie. I was just going to ask subgrantees who are on the call, if you're having problems or you haven't received the automated AmpliFund invitation, please put a message in the chat. I know that we've had a couple hiccups with that. So if you haven't gotten to the point where you've received the email with the invitation, please let us know.
Thanks, Bonnie. Okay, Andrew did a great job of setting us up for the next thing that we have to do in the system. So once we've edited our account information, what we have to do is add users. Again, your AmpliFund account is for your organization. So this is for one organization, and then within this account, I will have different users who are my staff that work at this organization. To add those users, I come to administration, system security, users. Best practice is that you should have at least 2 users in AmpliFund. And the reason for that is in case you have turnover or someone loses access because they forgot their password temporarily, you always want to have a backup user. So even if you're a very small organization, it's very helpful to have 2 people in AmpliFund, even if that second person does not use it regularly. When you come into AmpliFund for the first time, you're likely just going to see one user here. That's your account owner that DEQ set up. What you'll want to do is add that second user or list of users for your organization. To do that, we come back to these icons in the upper right-hand corner and click the plus sign. Notice that if I hover over these icons, it's telling me what they do. So I want to use the plus sign, which is the create icon. So if I click on that, it's going to open up a new user record for me. There's a couple pieces of information here. To start with, we have subscriptions. So these are daily and weekly emails from AmpliFund. There are different times when the system will send you notifications. For example, in our training next week, we'll talk about payment requests. When your payment requests are approved by DEQ, you'll receive a notification from the system. So you need to have one of these two boxes checked to receive those system notifications. If daily is too frequent, feel free to uncheck this box and leave it just on weekly, or maybe you want daily and you don't want a weekly email. However you prefer, I would recommend keeping one of these checked. Applicant portal access means that this user has permission to apply through AmpliFund for funding opportunities. DEQ will eventually be running application cycles through AmpliFund. So this box needs to be checked if the user that you're creating needs to be able to submit applications. The role is a security role for your user. There's really only 3 that I would recommend you worry about. The organizational admin has access to everything, so they can see all parts of the system, they can see all grants. If you use a department admin, that person can only see grants that they are just assigned to. And the executive role has view-only access. What that means is the organizational admin and the department admin or the department users can edit, the executive cannot. In general, you probably just need to use these top 3, org admin, department admin, or executive. Once you've made that selection, you'll need to type in the first name of the user that you're creating. First and last name are both required. In AmpliFund, anytime you see an asterisk, that means it's a required field. The address is optional, and you're going to want to enter an email address for that person. Once you have all of that, you can click Create, and your new user record is saved. You can also edit existing users by clicking the edit pencil, and that will take you back to this page. I know from DEQ that some of you work with contractors to manage your grants. That process is a little more complicated. If you have a contractor, you're going to want to reach out to AmpliFund support, and I'll tell you how to do that. AmpliFund support will create the contractor their own organization account, and then the contractor will be added as a user to your account. So if you're working with a contractor, make sure that you start by reaching out to AmpliFund support first. Go ahead and create your own staff as users, but for a contractor, start with AmpliFund support and they'll walk you through that process. Are there any questions about creating users? There's a question in the chat. I do not see the plus symbol in the administration settings. Did I miss a step for creating a second user? So you go to administration, expand the drop down for system security, and open the user screen. It should look like this. The plus sign is on this screen. Okay. The next thing we want to do is kind of get into what you really care about, your grants. To see your grants from DEQ, you're going to click Grant Management and Grants. That is going to take you to the grants grid in AmpliFund. So a lot of the screens in AmpliFund are set up in this grid layout. It looks like a table with columns. There's a few things that you can do from any grid. So you'll mostly use this with grants, but it applies to any grid that you see in the system, including that user area that we just looked at. First, notice that we have some fields here: total awarded amount, closeout date. If I click the drop-down arrow, I have some options. I can sort the columns, ascending or descending. If I hover over columns, I also have the ability to add more fields. So maybe I want to see the start date for my grant and the end date. And I also want to see the match requirements. So I'm going to check and turn all of those columns on. Notice that I now have more options in my grid. This looks better, but it's still not quite the way I want it. I want to reorder these columns. To do that, I click on a column and I drag it. So I'm going to put my dates together. So I'm going to drag the end date in front of the closeout date. So I have start and closeout. I'm going to move status to the end, and I'm going to bring the match up by the total awarded amount. Also filter. So if you want to filter, pick any column. I'm going to filter on the grant name. I click the drop down arrow. I hover over filter and it brings up this pop-up menu. Whenever you're filtering, I would recommend using the drop down to switch to contains. It's a little easier to filter. So with contains, I can just put in some keywords, like maybe I want to look at awards that only have the number 2 in them. And then I can click filter. So that changes my list. If I come back to the drop down, hover over filter, I can clear it if I don't want it anymore. The last thing that you can do from the grid view is drag columns. So you may do that if you want to group by a certain thing. So for example, let's assume I had awards from multiple fiscal years. I may want to see all of the awards that I received in one fiscal year. So I can drag fiscal year to my header up here, and it's going to create a grouping of my awards by fiscal year. Notice that at the bottom here, it's showing 25 items per page. I only have 2 items, so that's fine. If you had a larger list, you may want to expand this to more items per page. You can also use the toggles to go back and forth between pages. When you get all of this set up to your liking, this is a screen that you're going to come to many times as you manage your award. So I would recommend saving a view. To do that, you come to these icons in the upper right, and the middle one that looks kind of like a ribbon is called Save Current View. Views are essentially like bookmarks in your browser. They let you come back to a view that you've created or set up in the past. So if I want to save what I've done here, creating a view will remember my grouping. It would remember any filters, the number of items per page, the columns I've selected. So saving a view lets me do this setup once and then just come back to it again. So I'm going to save this because this is a view that I want to look at for my awards. I'm going to click the ribbon icon. I have to give my views a name. So I'm going to say grouped by fiscal year. I can give the views a description. There's no asterisk, so I know that's not required. If I check this box, it's a view that only I can see. If I leave this unchecked, it's something that my whole organization can view. So I would just recommend some caution on making views that aren't private, so you don't create a whole bunch of views for your organization. So I'm going to make this private and click create. Once you do that, if you come back to grants management and expand views, you're going to see this grouped by fiscal year received. And if you click on that, it's going to bring us right back to a setup that looks exactly like this. Are there any questions about creating views and managing the grid? I see one in the chat. What did you hover over to add columns? To add columns or to do most of the management here, on any of the columns, you see this drop down arrow to the right. If you click on that, that's where you have the options to filter. And then if you hover over columns, you can check these boxes off and on. Any other questions about views or the grants grid? Okay, let's jump into the grant that we've received from DEQ. So I got that activation email. I come into AmpliFund, come to Grants Management Grants, and I see my awards. To actually look at your grants, you're going to click the name of the grant. So I'm going to open this IDDEQ test award. And each grant that you have is going to be set up in a similar way. You still have your left navigation. You still have your icons in the upper right. However, now you have a menu across the top, and this is specific to your grant. The details is where we are. It's the basic information about the grant. You can think of this as an electronic file folder, and each of these are different tabs that you have within your folder. On the grant itself, you're going to see some common fields. You see the name that DEQ gave it. You see how much you're funded. You see if there's a match requirement. These fields here will cover more next week. These are dynamic, and as you start to submit payment requests to DEQ, these fields are going to update. So you can see a real-time estimate of how much grant funding you have left, how much you have left to contribute to your match based on the invoices that you've submitted and what's been approved. On any part of AmpliFund, anytime you see this gray circle with an eye in the middle, if you hover over that, it's going to give you a definition of what that field means. There's some other fields that are going to be important to you on here. The award identification number is going to be the contract number that DEQ assigns to you. If this is a federal award, you may also see the assistance listing number or some other federal IDs provided. You can see their period of performance here with the start and the end dates. There may be a description provided. So this whole page has kind of pieces of information for you. If you come to award budget information, you'll see your awarded amount. Over time, you may see some changes to that amount. They'll all be logged here so you can see the history of that award. For instance, this one started with 150,000 and it increased to 415,000. The match requirement may or may not apply to your program. If you have a cash match requirement, meaning you receive grant funds, but you have to contribute so many dollars of your own funds, that will be entered here. In-kind match is typically goods and services that you're providing. That may not apply to the program that you receive from DEQ. So if it doesn't apply, these will be zeros. So in this top menu, we just looked at the details tab. We also have analytics. This is going to be a dashboard showing different aspects about your grant. So it is going to have your grant manager, which we're going to look at in a minute. It has those periods of performance dates. If you're assigned any tasks, they'll come up here. There's links to different parts of the system. This is pulling a lot of data in, so sometimes it takes a minute to load. But you'll also see some visuals here that relate to your budget. So that can be a helpful reference for you. The post-award menu is where you're going to spend the majority of your time. Under the financial tab, you'll see budget and expenses. The expenses will cover in more detail in our training next week, and so we will with the budget, but I do want to kind of show you the budget today. So your budget's going to be part of your contract with DEQ. So you'll see budget categories and line items, and what I really want to point out today, we're not going to go into the budget in depth, is that as you start to manage your grant, you can see how much was funded per line item, how much you've actually drawn down from DEQ. So I was funded for 155,000 in equipment. I've drawn down 2,100, which means that I have 153,000 remaining. So this is some of that real-time data updates that you'll be able to see as you start actively managing your grant. Most of the other parts of this will be covered in subsequent trainings. So that's the only thing I want to point out for today. You also have the tools folder. There is a documents folder that you can use. You have unlimited document storage. So this is where you can start to create an electronic file of your grant. Notes can be used if you want to track conversations with DEQ or any internal conversations about your grants. They're only visible to your organization. And then if you ever get any tasks assigned for this grant, they will be here as well. Any questions about understanding this grant record or the menu options across the top? Okay, the next thing that we need to do is actually edit our grant. So we're going to come to those icons in the upper right corner. And again, I'm looking for the edit icon, which looks like a pencil. I'm going to click on that. And I'm actually going to, so when I click on that, it opens up the screen for editing. And there's two pieces of information that you need to do. The first one is check this recipient award name. It's going to populate with whatever name DEQ calls the grants. However, you can give the grant your own name, something that means something to your organization. If you have any sort of a naming convention for your grants or your files, this is where you would use it. So this is item number 1 to do when you edit your grant. The second item that you should all do is assign a recipient grant manager. We started by setting up users. If I click the drop-down arrow, this is going to show me all the users in my account. And I need to select one user to be the recipient grant manager. The recipient grant manager receives all the notifications from DEQ. If you remember back to our user screen, which, sorry, I'm going to click through some tabs. When we chose this role, if we choose one of these department roles, the department user will only see grants for which they are assigned as the recipient grant manager. So this really should be the key person who's managing the grant on a day-to-day basis. And again, they receive all system notifications based on those subscription choices that you made for daily or weekly emails. Notifications come at different times in the award's life, most notably around the payment process, which we will cover next week. So this is something you should do as soon as you get that activation email. Optional things to do, including editing the award name, adding a description for the award. So DEQ can put in a description. You have the ability to put your own description. And then you also can use this unique identifier field. This would be used if you have any sort of a number that is specific to the grant, any sort of filing system. Maybe it's an ID from your financial system that you use to track the grant. This field could hold that information. Again, you have to have a recipient grant manager. It's specified with the asterisk. It's optional to edit the award name, to add a description, and to add a unique identifier. Once you've done all of that, you click Save. Are there any questions about how to edit your grant? Okay. Another piece of the system that's going to be very useful for you is the reports navigation. So again, I'm expanding my left menu by clicking the gray arrow. If I come to reports, it has a bar chart icon. I see a whole list of reports here. We're not going to look through all of these, but just note that most of the reports you'll probably want to use are going to be in the post-award dropdown. So if you expand that by clicking on the gray arrow, you're going to see a list of reports. I can view them like this in the menu, but notice some of the names are cut off unless I scroll. If I would rather, I can open that up by clicking on it, opening it in a new tab, or just clicking on it. And that's going to open up a screen that lists all the reports. You can then see the description of the reports too. So that can be very useful for you to know what you're looking at. Today, I just want to show you one report to kind of give you an idea of how they work. So we're going to open this post-award status. So when you run a report, they're all going to look similar to this. You'll see the report name in the upper left corner, and then you'll have a panel on the right. That panel is going to have several pieces of information. They may not all be on every report, but it's common to have filters. So for example, I have filters on award status, risk, departments, and subjects. The only one, because I have this test account that doesn't have a lot of information in it, the departments is the only one where I really can make a choice. So to use the filter, I would just click the drop down and select what department that I want to see. I can also clear it by coming back to all. Notice my report here is listing every award in my account. If I use the scroll bar on the bottom, I can see there's lots of information in here on kind of the key details of my grant, including the period of performance, how much I was funded, if I have any match requirement, what I've expensed to date, and what my remaining budget is. All of those are listed here in this column section. If for some reason I don't want to see one of these, for example, I'm not really using subjects, so I don't want it taking up space on the screen, I can uncheck this box and it will drop off the report. If I check it, it comes back, so you can edit kind of the view of your report based on that. If your report has multiple pages, there'll be a toggle up here where you can switch between pages. And you may also want to export this report. So maybe you need to give a report to a board member or to someone that doesn't have access to AmpliFund. If you come to the upper left corner and click the drop down arrow next to what says export PDF, you see a list of file types that you can export. Excel downloads it as a spreadsheet. PDF will download it as a PDF. RTF is a Word document. And then CSV is a CSV file, comma separated value. So notice as I hover over these options, it tells me what it is. Probably the only one you haven't seen before is the RTF extension. So I'd like a spreadsheet. So again, I'm clicking the drop down arrow. I'm going to click Export Excel. I'll get kind of that progress bar. And then you should see the report. For me, my browser settings downloaded it at the bottom of my browser. For you, it may go straight into a download folder. Depends how you have your computer set up. And then if you open that file, it's going to look exactly how you have it set up in your screen. So any filters that you applied will be here. Notice that I kept subject off, so subject doesn't export. So now I have this data in a spreadsheet and I can manage it however I'd like from here. Same is true of any of the export types. Are there any questions about viewing and using reports? Okay. The last thing I wanted to cover with you is how you get technical help for using AmpliFund. First, when you're in the product, when you're logged in, we've talked about the Resource Center. That's always here in the bottom left. These step-by-step guides can help you through a lot of different parts of the system, either the grant management or the onboarding guides. The navigation overview, user management, account information, grant walkthrough, those are all things we covered today. So those will be helpful for you to kind of remind yourself as you log in for the first time. In addition, there is a customer support team at AmpliFund who is available to answer questions for you. You can reach them several ways. The first way is if you are in AmpliFund. Well, I have some slides here that are set up to going to show you how to access customer support. So there's a support portal. You can submit a ticket to this email address, or you can call the help desk. This customer support team is available from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, excluding holidays. So those are ways you can access them outside of AmpliFund. If you're still in AmpliFund, on most of the screens that we've looked at, we have seen, in the upper right-hand corner, this little eye icon. If you click on that, that is a shortcut to create a support ticket. So you have to put in your name, your email, the subject, and then whatever you need help with. You have an option here to attach files. In general, I think it's helpful to take screenshots if you're having difficulty with something and attach those to the support ticket. That can speed up the support process a lot faster. In addition, we have a support site that you can access. So you have, that's the support portal at amplifund.zendesk.com. You do have to register for that portal. It is not the same as your AmpliFund login, so you will have to create a separate password for this. But once you have that password, you can access our support site, which looks like this. So there's several pieces of key information here. The instructions area, you might come to a lot that's going to give you step-by-step instructions on using some features. The Resource Center does something similar within the product. You can also submit a request from here if you have questions. There's a search bar if you need to put in keywords to find anything. And here's another link to submit a ticket. I do want to point out this upcoming training and video section. We periodically have this Ask Me Anything AmpliFund session. So this is an hour of time where our support team is available to answer any questions. So you can just log in to these days, you register for them, then you log in, you ask your question, and you can leave. You don't have to stay for the whole hour, but it's time that's dedicated when you can reach a support person outside of that typical phone line. So those are kind of a helpful tool for you to use. Are there any questions about accessing AmpliFund support or using the Resource Center? Okay, so we've covered a lot today. So as kind of a summary, there's some key next steps that you need to do. You need to use that activation email to log into AmpliFund. And if you haven't received that email, please reach out to your program manager at DEQ to just check on the progress of that and resolve any issues. Once you've logged in, you need to update your account information. So You need to make sure that the primary address is correct, your organization name is correct, that you have a UEI, and that you have an EIN number. You should add at least 2 users to your account. And then for each grant that you've received from DEQ, you need to assign a recipient grant manager. Those are the first 4 steps that you can do within the system. And then next week, there's a second training on the payment process on Tuesday, the 8th at 8 a.m. Mountain or 7 a.m. Pacific time. Today's training will be recorded and DEQ will have a link. That training on the 8th will also be recorded. We have a few minutes here. Are there any final questions?
Jennifer, this is Bonnie. I have a question. When an organization goes to add another user, as the suggested best practice is, does each user create their own login, or are they all logging in under that same login credential?
Each user has their own username and password, but they're all logging into the same organization account. Does that answer your question?
Okay, so do the users create their accounts from that same invitation email that we sent?
The only person that receives the invitation email is the account owner. The account owner will need to add the other users.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yep, good questions. Any other questions? So again, as part of the follow-up from today's training, DEQ is going to get the recording and slides. The slides will have a lot of reference points for everything we walked through today. So there's going to be kind of quick little write-outs for how to assign your grant manager, how to reset password, keys to like that activation email, as well as a list of references. And these references that you'll see are in the support center. These are user guides. So this is going to be another resource for you, is the slide deck, to kind of be kind of a shortcut to everything that we learned today. So if there are no more questions, thank you for your time today. Please work on these next steps. And if you have any questions, please reach out to AmpliFund support, who can assist you on any of these items. All right, have a good rest of your day.